This 1995 post-apocalyptic epic, directed by Kevin Reynolds and written by Peter Rader and David Twohy, was truly a visionary project to execute. With costly, ambitious, and time-consuming practical effects, bad luck during production, tension behind the scenes, the media frenzy before and after release, Waterworld was born with stacks arranged heavily against it. At the time, it was looked at as a belly flop, but in reality, it wasn't. It just became the poster child for filmmaking of the past. The time of these massive practical sets seemed to be over. Visual effects and CG were integrated heavily into the process. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. An ambitious aquatic blockbuster, origins and vision. Although no dates were mentioned in the film, the production designer Dennis Gassner stated in a podcast that the year was 2500, the polar caps had melted, and the sea level had risen to drown every continent on Earth. A dry land was a mythical palace in this world. Humans have built floating communities from scrap metal and tried to survive in this wet world. A lone drifter, the mariner, Kevin Costner, is a mutated human who scavenges for survival and fights the outlaws. He is captured by a formidable gang, but is helped by a woman and a young girl to escape. Later, he reluctantly joins them to find the mythical dry land. A Harvard graduate, Peter Rader, wrote this script in 1986 but shelved it till 1989, famously citing it as Mad Max on water. He pitched it to Roger Corman's company, which was looking for a Mad Max-style film. Roger was a huge figure of the independent cinema community, known for launching the careers of Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, Jack Nicholson, and more. He was known as the king of the cult and the spiritual godfather of New Hollywood. According to Rader, Roger's producer told him, "Are you out of your mind? A movie like that would cost us $5 million to make." And with this, they backed off. Peter still wrote a spec script, which was scooped up by Universal Pictures as a potential blockbuster and assigned marquee names and a massive budget. As the film was completed, the budget had skyrocketed to $175 million, making it the most expensive film to date. Universal wanted Robert Zemeckis, who ended up coming out with Forrest Gump a year before this film, or Lawrence Kasdan, who did Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner also a year earlier. Costner, being a massive star, started to make decisions for the project. He had personally invested $22 million in this project by the end of production. Still, initially, he demanded that Kevin Reynolds direct, with whom he had worked on Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He even threatened to walk if Reynolds wasn't hired. Universal was in a tight spot. There couldn't be a worse time for them to produce this film. In 1990, Matsushita Electric Industrial Company bought MCA, the parent company of Universal Studios, for $6.6 billion. MCA president Sidney Sheinberg and their chairman Lou Wasserman were in a dispute with Matsushita as they were demanding more financial freedom while Waterworld was in production. Steven Spielberg, who made E.T., Jurassic Park, and Jaws with Universal, left to create a new company, DreamWorks Pictures Jr. The latest film from Universal was a flop. They had experience with practical effects, and they had worked for them before. Animatronics and CG were used together to make Jurassic Park, and it changed the industry permanently. After Waterworld, people understood the time for giant, unnecessary physical sets was coming to an end, and it would be cheaper to make films from now on. Universal faced huge problems during its production, which weren't just about the inflated budget. Disaster at Sea. Legendary production nightmares. The initial plan for the film was $100 million for 96 shooting days. This was already high because the complicated sets were to be built on water. Costner had decided to shoot on water even after Spielberg advised him not to after his experience while shooting Jaws. Peter Rader, the writer, said in an interview, Spielberg was unequivocal. Do not shoot on water. Use a secondary unit for the couple of shots you need of water. Do all your coverage in a tank or a stage. They went ahead with building a massive floating atoll in Kauai Harbor, just off the island of Hawaii. It weighed more than 1,000 tons sets and cost close to $22 million alone. This setup alone used up all the available steel in Hawaii, and more was flown from California. The Kona Airport's runway was extended by a quarter mile to accommodate the heavier planes for safe landing. This atoll was just off the coast, so it was still manageable. There were scenes of open water that needed to be shot at least 2 miles off the coast, which offered 270 degrees of open water. In those open waters, there were other sets to be built, like a slave colony, a model of Exxon Valdez, a real oil tanker that spilled her cargo of crude oil in 1989, and 2 30-foot sailing vessels of the Mariner, $500,000 for each. With these extravagant sets, the production had also added more than $35 million to Hawaii's economy. The costumes, production design, and art direction teams put in big efforts to make this world seem real to us. It was an incredibly difficult shoot. For starters, simple scenes took too long to shoot. The crew was on separate boats while filming the action, and the waves naturally would pull them apart, making it impossible to have the same camera angles and depth on each take. One particularly difficult 10-minute scene took a complete month to shoot, which is longer than entire movies for some. There was another sequence with 50 gang members on jet skis attacking and destroying the home of the Mariner, along with his followers. This sequence started in mid-August and kept going past mid-September. Turning the set or the sailing vessel so that the camera wouldn't pick up land was also a huge time-consuming task. The shoot was extended to 166 days from the 96 days that was initially discussed, of which Kevin Costner spent 157 days on set. The other aspect was the traveling for the crew to and fro from the set. The makeup crew was on a separate boat, which ferried to the floating set and back to shore after each take, a process that took a lot of time. As they did their job and cleared the way, the boats with the camera had drifted away, so the shot setup had to be done again. Sometimes the wind had ruffled the lead's hair, so the makeup crew had to rush back and do their job all over again. There were about 30 additional boats for lighting, camera, catering, costumes, etc. None of the boats or floating sets had bathrooms. Filming would repeatedly stop so that people could be ferried to portable toilets near the shore. The worst part, due to local weather conditions, filming needed to be stopped after 3 or 4 p.m. All of this allowed only 5 to 6 setups a day for filming. The exhausted crew had to undergo a lot during production. Accidents frequently occurred, and the crew often suffered from seasickness. In time, they figured out that ginger snaps were pretty effective for people. Stuntmen were stung by jellyfish, and Tina Majorino, the little girl, was nicknamed Jellyfish Candy, as she was stung 3 different times. Filming was shut down 3 times due to hurricane alerts. One hurricane caused the slave colony setup to sink while being filmed. They rebuilt the set, but the entire slaver colony part was written out after the set was destroyed. A tsunami scare halted production for half a day. It doesn't end there. Actors and their stunt doubles nearly lost their lives while shooting. Kevin Costner was tied to the sailing vessel during a storm to do a helicopter shot, but his stunt double suffered an embolism during a deep-sea dive. Once, a stunt double was washed out to sea along with several extras who were nearly drowned. Even Jean Triplehorn, the female lead, and Tina nearly drowned on their first day when the sailing vessel sank, dragging them behind it. All of this was just the pre-release drama. There was more. Release, reception, and box office infamy. The movie was pegged Kevin's Gate before the release, stemming from Heaven's Gate, which flopped badly at the box office. There was a public verdict even before anyone saw it. It was a classic case of schadenfreude, especially to see the megastar Kevin Costner, who won the Academy Award for Best Director and Best Picture for Dances with Wolves, which grossed $424 million on a $22 million budget. Also, the antics of the infamous star were known. A lot of people were fired during production. Even the writer, Peter Rader, was let go after 7 drafts of the script, and David Twohy was brought in. Scenes were rewritten while in production, with mostly Costner dictating what went in. Even Joss Whedon was brought in for a week, but he stayed longer, which he described as 7 weeks of hell. He explained the situation as he was there to take notes from Costner and hear his ideas, which nobody listened to. He said he wrote a few puns and a few scenes that he can't even sit through to watch. Writing aside, the direction was also not streamlined. Director Kevin Reynolds and Kevin Costner had many disputes during production, similar to their previous film together, Robin Hood. But this time around, after the first produced 170-minute cut, Costner demanded reshoots as the summer release date was getting closer. He didn't like the action and fought with Reynolds. On the other hand, Reynolds claimed Costner was only concerned about his character. Later, Costner took over the editing and Reynolds quit. Reynolds quoted, "That way he can always be working with his favorite actor and his favorite director." The final film was released as a 135-minute cut. It opened with $21 million and topped the weekend box office for 2 weeks. Domestically, it grossed just over $88 million, which was considered a flop as everyone wanted it to be. It was called Fish Tar, coming from Ishtar, which was a commercial flop. Overseas, the scenario changed as it claimed $175 million, bringing the total to $264 million globally, which wasn't great, but not bad. Other films had set the bar high to be called a resounding hit, like Jaws, E.T., Jurassic Park, and more. Waterworld's Second Life, cult status and pop culture. It wasn't entirely a disaster for our post-apocalyptic wet world. Universal took years, but they eventually turned it into a profit through home video sales. ABC released an extended version on TV with 40 minutes added, which explored more about the world, the people, the gang's religious beliefs, and their ability to refine crude oil. This cut was way more complete and helped Waterworld achieve its cult status. However, it was a TV special, so it was censored for violence and language. This film garnered so much curiosity and interest among people, especially given its unique take on post-apocalyptic stories and its efforts to make it look real. That's why a fan edit of the film called Waterworld, the Ulysses Cut, was created. It hoped to make the most complete version of the film. The fans compiled it from several broadcast versions with the additional footage and restored the censored parts. In one of the most bizarre scenarios, the original distributor officially sanctioned the fan edit by releasing a box set with the other TV versions. They remastered the Ulysses Cut in high definition by using original footage over the broadcast material. There aren't many films whose fan edits get recognized and released. Maybe Universal did it because it needed anything that could help turn this film into a profit. Or perhaps they understood this was not a flop. People genuinely appreciated it, and they showed their appreciation back. One of the biggest appreciations people have for this film is the demanding and dangerous stunts. To do all that on the sea and in this production nightmare was truly impressive. Universal also celebrates this and continues this legacy by conducting a Waterworld-inspired stunt show at Universal Studios theme park in LA. It became so popular that they opened it in Japan, Beijing, and Singapore. Starting just a year after the film's release, it's still running strong almost 3 decades later. It also serves as a narrative sequel where the characters return and engage in fierce battles in fiery explosions.
The land.
How Waterworld changed Hollywood, legacy, and influence. While it didn't gain as much as it'd like, Waterworld has certainly found a place in pop culture to be remembered by. It gained a loyal fan base and a unique appreciation for filmmaking. It also served as an example for others and for some, a cautionary tale. Nonetheless, it definitely changed the way movies were made, especially at the time. There was a sense of ambition among the filmmakers before this film to build huge sets and to shoot in challenging locations. After hearing the stories of this production, many people got a reality check for such a large-scale project. The budget overruns, the logistical issues, even as simple as waves pushing the camera away, were brought to life and gave a clear lesson on creativity and practicality. Waterworld forced Hollywood executives to follow a more conventional approach to filmmaking. Digital effects and more cost-cutting, efficient methods became common in the workplace. The era of physical sets for fantasy and science fiction epics was, ironically, sinking. We have seen CGI-heavy filmmaking nowadays, as they claim it delivers the same results, but there is a touch of realism in films like Waterworld, which is why it can gain a cult status. There is an appetite in people for practical filmmaking. It needs to be done in a highly manageable way. The one-star controls everything approach cannot make this happen. This film also earned an Oscar nomination for Best Sound, alongside Apollo 13, Batman Forever, Braveheart, and Crimson Tide. Apollo 13 won, but the nomination was in appreciation of this film's brilliant efforts to bring the post-apocalyptic to life. In this era of consuming movies, it makes perfect sense for Waterworld to be a cult classic. The practical effects, The drama? The bad writing because of the 36 drafts involving 6 different writers, the epicness of a lost Earth, the science that doesn't add up, but it's acceptable just because it's cool. This movie is among the most popular genres of today. The so bad it's so good. We're glad this movie was made, and hope for more practical effects, but with better management. We can learn so much from this film's story, and we wouldn't be surprised if a film were made based on this movie's production. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks everyone.